Good evening, friends. Welcome to Akulmach. My name is Chandrakant, and we are going to discuss something which is related to geopolitics and related to the business community, mostly in India and also about Russia. So let us start our discussion because and hear this conversation very carefully. And since I'm live, you can also send in your questions directly to me. Your questions will be displayed here about this particular, geopolitical scenario that we are facing today, especially in India and Russia. So let us start by discussing about Russia. Russia as a country is a very large country. The entire country has 11 time zones, and they are one of the superpower. As we used to say that America and Russia, they are opposite each other. They are quite powerful militarily. In science and technology, they are quite ahead, and also their population is not as big as India, so they don't have too many hands to work on various things. So it is not that they are popular for every other thing in terms of business and all that. They are very popular in terms of manufacturing of arms and armaments, and things like that. But they are not a country which can produce everything, all kinds of industry. So for example, they are very good in one or two products. They are very good in petroleum production. They are also very good in gas production, petroleum gas production, and that has become their major export item from Russia. So even though they are a very large country in terms of population, they are smaller than India, and in terms of production of all kinds, they are not having as much vibrant industry as you will find in US or in India or in China. So so it's very important to explain Russia as a country in the first place. Now, lately they have been facing issues with regard to their invasion of Ukraine. What has happened is that the Russia has invaded Ukraine, and as a result, there has been a lot of sanctions. So we have actually discussed the Ukraine war several times. We are not specifically discussing anything about Russia and Ukraine. Every country has their own issues. So I think these two neighbors are tackling their issues. Eventually, Ukraine and Russians are the same people, just like we have India and Pakistan, very similar people, but because of the political issues, they are fighting and the battle is raging on. And there are global powers who are actually fueling the matter, and there are a lot of sanctions on Russia. And these sanctions will affect Russia in a long run, not immediately, but definitely in a long run, if they are not able to continue their business as usual. And in order to continue their business, as I explained in the beginning, that they do not have too many things to sell to other countries. They have petroleum, they have probably wheat, but other countries are also catching up in terms of petroleum and in terms of wheat, etc., which are predominantly required in other countries like some African countries, etc. So therefore, if this is the issue, and if the sanctions are going to affect Russia in terms of their economy, something has to be done. And that's something that has to be done is basically improving trade with China and India, because when it comes to petroleum, the two nations which are the most populous nation in the world, which is India and China, are very weak in petroleum products and the natural gas basically production, and they have a very large population to support. Both India and China both have the same issue. They are rich in all other natural minerals, but they are very poor in petroleum products. They have to import the petroleum from OPEC countries, or any other country which is not part of OPEC. They have to get it from outside their own native countries. So I think for Russia, in order to maintain its economy, will depend largely on supply of oil and gas to three populous nations of the world, which is China, India, and of course United States. United States is also very popular and also a big consumer of petroleum products. However, United States is loggerhead with Russia at the moment. They don't have a pleasant relationship. So the markets that remain for Russia in order to make money are India and China. Well, rest of the world, they don't really care because the consumption will be minuscule. So if other OPEC countries are selling to rest of the world, and if Russia is able to fine tune equation with the India and China, they will sail through these sanctions. So this is what is going on. Now, at this juncture, let's talk about India. India is the fifth largest economy in the world today, and among all the economies, it is the fastest growing economy. And that is not all, it is actually growing 5 times faster than any other economy in the world today. So India is definitely growing very, very extremely rapidly, and that is why it doesn't matter whether the Indian population is also Indian exceed in terms of population from China. So we have exceeded 1.4 billion, 140 billion people, but it won't matter because we are growing rapidly. The extreme poverty which exists in India, which used to exist in India, is no more prevalent. The extreme poverty has been eradicated, and now we are basically on the way of becoming a developed nation. So even though we are most populous country in the world, it won't matter. The per capita income is growing rapidly. At the same time, the adaptation of latest technology is very rapid when it comes to India. The general people are quite enterprising. They actually adapt the latest trend very openly with open heart, and they actually improve it further. There are a lot of new technologies coming out from India. So India overall is growing. It's also taking the world economy along, because if Indian, which is like 20%, roughly is 18 to 20% of the global population, is growing 5 times faster than the rest of the world, then definitely India will pull the world out of recession, because it's just logical. So considering that, and because of the digital payments which have become very popular in India, all the micro payments today are basically done digitally. And if you look at 140 billion people, nearly 60% of the digital transactions of all kinds of transactions in India are digital in nature. So India is a very large potent force when it comes to adaptation of digital technology. So everything is all digital, everything is clean. There are a lot of mechanisms which are in place to enable digital payment and transparencies, etc., etc. So a lot of good things are associated with India. Democratic setup. There are 28 different states, and all of these different 28 states have their own independent governments. All these different governments report to the central government of India. So the makeup of India is very much like EU. So even though it's one nation, but how the governance happens is similar to European Union. So if you imagine, if Russia starts selling their primary product, which is petroleum, to India, they are already having their deals with China. So we are only considering the India and Russia relationship in this video today. So that will have a major impact on the economy of Russia, as well as it will help India as well. So considering that, let's move on to the oil and gas business. The oil and gas business, if you look at, as I told you, that the largest market for oil and gas are two or three primary target market, which is of course USA, which is a large country, and India and China. And as you can see in this map also, most of the oil and gas traffic is happening around these countries, which is India, China, and US. And the fourth entity is Europe itself, which is similar to India, but 3 times smaller than India in terms of population, in terms of consumption itself. So Russia has Europe, EU as a primary market, and among the EU, Germany is their biggest client. So when it comes to petroleum product, Russia has a specific market, which is EU. It's close by, they have pipelines, and because of the availability of petroleum product at lower cost, there are countries, large countries like Germany and EU, decided not to construct any nuclear power plant, and they entirely depend on electricity generation on the gas which they buy from Russia. So while they are tackling all this issue, but the large market is India and China. So with China, they're already having their deals cut out. There are a lot of give and take going on between China and Russia. They are working on it, but China is a different country because Chinese government is sort of a sort of competition to Russian Politburo, because both are communist nations. India is a different market; it's democratic setup, and Russia definitely want to rope in India. India and Russia are very old allies also from very very long time. It's a very old friendly relationships. So considering India and Russia as good friends, and Russia has always supported India whenever India needed any help from Russia. So therefore, it is logical to buy oil and gas from Russia for India. And however, when we actually want to pay to Russia, we can decide whatever rate we want to pay. However, most of the payment today happens through dollar. We know that whenever we are traveling abroad, or whenever we are making any payment outside or receiving any payment from outside, it is always in dollars. So what happens is that the US dollars, even though it's their local currency, it is also most widely accepted global currency. So we have to maintain certain level of dollars cash with us, and that is called the foreign exchange reserves, in order to basically fulfill our import requirements, and we should be able to make the payment in dollars for anything that we buy from India. So since dollar is the most prevalent currency for international trade, and there are a lot of sanctions put on Russia, so how, even though India decide to buy the oil and gas from Russia, how India will be able to make the payment? Well, Russia can supply through whatever means, through a tanker or through a pipeline or whatever, that is not important. We have to basically make the payment of oil and gas that we buy from Russia. How India is going to make the payment? And if we are not able to make the payment in dollars, because there is obviously sanction on Russia, they won't be able to convert dollars into rubles. So one way is that we actually have some sort of intercurrency locking exchange between India and Russia. That means either India accept in rupees, or we pay in rubles. So in order for India to pay in rubles, we have to buy rubles from the market. And when we buy ruble from the market, we have to actually again go through the currency exchange, sell some of our dollars and buy rubles. So that is not going to help anyway. I think the first method is, if Russia starts to collect payment in rupees, that will help India as well, because Indian rupee will become global and start competing with dollars. So I think this is where the conversation is going on between Indian government and the Russian government, and by having a tie-up, direct tie-up, cross-currency tie-up between India and Russia, we may be able to bypass the Western sanctions which have been put on Russia. So I think this is exactly a very strong dialogue going on between the government, and as a result of that, now they are contemplating to integrate the payment systems which are prevalent on both sides. So instead of linking the direct currency, that is when Russia supply oil and gas to India, accept payment rupees, we are actually relying more on the digital method of payment. So since India, as I told you in the beginning, India is way ahead in adaptation of digital payment technology. Therefore, Russia also have a similar system called Mir, and both governments are now planning to integrate RuPay, which is the Indian equivalent of MasterCard, with Mir system, so that once these payment methods are linked together, then it will be a lot easier, not only to basically collect payment for the oil and gas, but generally by and large, this linkage of RuPay and Mir will help business community on both sides, because a lot of businesses in India are actually having RuPay cards, RuPay card linked to their merchant accounts. And if RuPay and Mir are linked, then there is no problem in making the payment digitally to any business person in Russia and vice versa. So if we actually end up buying some product or services from Russia, being in India, we will be able to make the payment directly from our RuPay card into Russia. And if Russians buy anything from India, any services, any product from India, they will be able to settle the payment using the Mir and RuPay connection that the Indian government is contemplating. So all in all, this is a very good news, and it's going to be very good, very powerful move if this happens. It will solve lot of issues between the government, especially, the biggest problem a merchant faces on both sides is that, okay, I'm willing to buy services from you, but how do I collect the payments? Because if there's no collection of payment, there are a lot of hassles between two nations, then it's not as a starting point. So if RuPay and Mir are integrated natively together, then there will be a lot of issues solved when it comes to cross currency payment, especially for business community in Russia and in India. So friends, thank you so much for listening to me. If you have any suggestions, any questions, feel free to send in your comments, and I will catch you again very soon in the next one. Bye bye for now.